The manhwa begins with a young lady running in the forest, the trees and bushes whipping past her as she sprints. Her mind is filled with the harsh words a certain lady told her earlier. The lady called her an insect and a disgrace, just like her mother. When she talked back, the lady hit her hard. The memory of people laughing at her for being Lord Barek's illegitimate child makes her heart pound faster. They always talk about how her mother was well known in the entertainment districts, hinting that she had a rough life. They mention how her mother often had scratches on her face, never without a new mark. She keeps running, tears streaming down her face, until she suddenly finds herself in a part of the forest that looks completely dried up. She walks toward the burning part of the forest, feeling the heat on her skin, and wonders why it's so hot there. It feels like there was a fire. As she gets closer, she suddenly sees a dragon. She wonders if it's hurt and bleeding. The dragon notices her and gets up. She asks if it's injured and if she can help heal it. In response, the dragon roars at her, making her step back for a moment. She tells the dragon that it's okay, she'll make it feel better. As she examines its wounds, she realizes they are too big, and she'll need to use a lot of her power to heal it. But she can't leave it in pain. She knows how terrible it feels to be wounded. Gathering all her strength, the lady focuses on healing the injured dragon. It is an exhausting task, and she can feel her energy rapidly draining away with each passing moment. Despite her intense concentration and determination, her strength is waning. After a grueling effort, she finally uses up the last of her energy and collapses onto the ground. As she lies there, utterly spent and unable to move, she hears the dragon, now fully healed, transform into a man. The man looks at her with a mix of surprise and admiration, remarking on her bravery. He is astonished that she, a mere human, has shown no fear in the face of such a daunting task. Though she can hear his voice, the words are unclear as her consciousness starts to fade away. Her vision blurs, and she slips into unconsciousness, completely drained from the effort. Years later, the scene shifts to a room where a group of maids are discussing the lady's appearance. One maid comments on how the dye used on the lady's face seems to be too strong, making her face look quite a mess. The other maid explains that the dye contains a lot of sulfur, which is why it looks so terrible. However, she adds that no one really cares about how the dye turns out. The old king has a peculiar obsession with gold hair, and as long as the hair meets his bizarre standards, everything else is secondary. The maids continue their chatter, not realizing the weight of the lady's past actions and sacrifices. They focus on the superficial aspects, while the lady's past and the consequences of her healing efforts remain forgotten. One of the maids whispers to the other, saying she heard that the lady is now the king's new concubine. The other maid quietly replies, saying that there aren't many concubines left because the king tends to get bored with them and ends up killing them. The lady overhears this and thinks to herself that she's set to be sold off to the king the moment she turns 20. She regrets not running away 10 years ago when she had the chance. She reflects on how she had healed the wounded dragon at that time, a decision that set her on this path. Her thoughts wander, filled with a mix of regret and resignation. As they continue preparing her, one of the maids says they should cover the lady's face, as the madam ordered. She reassures the lady that it will be all right and that it will settle once they reach the capital. The lady, feeling nervous, moves to meet the older woman waiting for her. The older woman immediately comments on her appearance, saying that her face is still unattractive. She worries that the king might be disappointed because, as the daughter of a notable person, the king expects her to be exceptionally beautiful. The lady feels a pang of anxiety at the thought of failing to meet the king's expectations. She wonders what her future holds and whether she will ever escape this fate or find a way to change her destiny. The man standing behind them reassures his mother, saying she shouldn't worry because he has arranged a very large payment. His mother looks puzzled and asks where he managed to get all this treasure from. The man explains that a dark wizard had informed him about a hidden stash of gold buried in graves near the border of Tyre. Hearing this, his mother becomes visibly scared and asks if he has been robbing the graves where the dragon people of Tyre bury their ancestors. She scolds him harshly, calling him foolish for messing with the Tyrites and their sacred burial sites, mentioning something called the Mezzaluk. Her voice is filled with fear and concern as she warns him of the potential consequences. Just then, the entire house begins to shake violently. They rush to the window and see chaos outside. The Tyrites have launched an invasion. The guards outside are desperately shouting orders to prevent any intruders from getting inside, but the Tyrites are overpowering them, killing the guards one by one. The scene is chaotic and filled with terror. The man, seeing the dire situation, gives a grim order to burn all the people who have disrespected the Mezzaluk, showing no mercy for the invaders. His mother watches in horror, realizing the gravity of their situation and the consequences of their actions. The guards urgently shout that the walls are melting down, and the entire structure seems to be falling apart. It becomes clear that the enemies are determined to destroy everything in their path. The older woman, looking frantic, quickly orders everyone to surrender and waves a white flag, signaling their desire to cease the conflict. Amid the chaos, the younger lady stands frozen, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. She realizes that this might be her best chance to flee. Her thoughts turn to the stone tower located in the north. She knows that if she can make it there, she might be able to climb through the wall and find a way out. A surge of hope and determination fills her as she resolves that she must escape this time, no matter the cost. As the chaos intensifies around them, with debris and dust filling the air, the older woman steps forward in desperation. She approaches the king of the Tairites, her face etched with worry. She raises her hands, clutching the white flag, and pleads with the king. Her voice trembles as she explains that they have already raised the white flag to signal their surrender. She asks the king what steps they should take next to avoid further bloodshed and to ensure the safety of everyone involved. The king looks at them coldly and says they should be beheaded and hung on the wall as a warning. The soldiers grab one of the servants and prepare to behead him. The older woman cries out for them to wait. Her son, standing beside her, falls to his knees and begs the Tairites to spare him. He promises to return all the treasure they took if they just let him live. He pleads desperately, saying he'll do anything they want, just as long as they spare his life. The Tairites listen, but their expressions remain hard and unforgiving. The older woman and her son wait, holding their breath, hoping that their pleas will be enough to save them. Meanwhile, the younger lady slowly edges toward the door, her heart pounding as she prepares to make her escape to the stone tower. The king of Tyre says that the man has insulted the Mezzaluk of Tyre and still expects to live. He declares that everyone involved should be killed. The man, panicking, tells his mother it's all because of the Dark Archmage. He explains that the Dark Archmage encouraged him to dig up the Mezzaluk's grave. The older woman, realizing that she needs to act fast or face death, quickly says they should hold off on the execution. She offers them her daughter, claiming she is very beautiful and has been chosen by King Brian of the Empire. The king of Tyre asks if her daughter is King Brian's lady. The older woman thinks that since King Brian and King Tyre are enemies, mentioning King Brian's lady will definitely grab his interest. The older lady continues, saying that King Brian longs for her daughter and even wanted to marry her. The king of Tyre, intrigued, asks where her daughter is. At that moment, the older woman realizes her daughter isn't present. Meanwhile, the younger lady notices that the knights are distracted at the wall and decides this is her chance to escape. As she hears the sound of wings cutting through the air, she looks up in surprise. A dragon descends gracefully and lands gently in front of her, its powerful wings stirring the air around her. The dragon carefully lowers her to the ground and then turns its attention to the older woman. The king of Tyre observes the scene, his gaze shifting to the younger lady. He notes her appearance, feeling that she lacks the beauty he expected. Yet something about her eyes catches his attention. They glisten with a light reminiscent of stars in the night sky. This unusual feature triggers a memory from 10 years ago of a human who had shown no fear and whose eyes had a similar, captivating glow. The king's interest is piqued as he ponders this connection, wondering if there is more to this girl than initially meets the eye. He starts to wonder if this place is close to where he landed back then, and he starts to guess that this child must have lived here. But judging by her hair color, he quickly concludes that it can't be her. The older lady, sensing the king's hesitation, steps forward and asks the king of Tyre if he is pleased with her daughter. She nervously explains that she should be given a little more time, as she plans to give her daughter a complete makeover to ensure she meets the king's expectations. She assures the king that she will bring her daughter to him once she has been made to look her absolute best. The king of Tyre listens intently, his expression unreadable. After a moment of silence, he speaks with a tone of authority. He tells the younger lady that she is now faced with a choice. The king offers her two stark options. She can either choose to become his soulmate, which would grant her a place of honor and perhaps safety, or she can face the grim fate of being buried along with everyone else who has disgraced the Mezaluk. The threat of punishment hangs heavily in the air as the king waits for her response. His words make it clear that her future, whether it be one of prestige or a tragic end, hinges entirely on the choice she makes at this critical moment. The gravity of the situation is evident, and the younger lady's mind races as she contemplates her options, knowing that her decision will determine her destiny in this perilous situation. The young lady, overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty, quickly realizes her best chance for survival might be agreeing to marry the king. Despite her trepidation, she nods in agreement, hoping this will protect her from a grim fate. The king, Hakan, looks at her intently and asks for her name. When she tells him it's Lucina, he is intrigued by the meaning of her name in the Breon language, which signifies moon. He remarks that the name seems fitting for her and introduces himself as Hakan, assuring her of his good treatment. Hakan then declares that Breon weddings require an officiant. He instructs one of his guards to summon the priest so the ceremony can commence immediately. His tone is resolute, indicating he wants the wedding to happen without delay. The older woman, astonished by the sudden and unplanned nature of the wedding, is visibly shocked. She tries to grasp the gravity of the situation, clearly unsettled by the king's abrupt decision. As the scene unfolds, Lucina prepares herself for the ceremony, her mind racing as she faces the rapid changes to her life. Hakan declares that following the wedding, he will require a witness to validate the union. The priest, puzzled, inquires who this witness will be. Without hesitation, Hakan states that it will be none other than King Breon himself. He elaborates on his plan, explaining that once the ceremony is completed, they will send word to King Brian to inform him that Hakan has claimed his wife. This, he says, is a direct response to past grievances. Specifically, he reminds them of how King Brian had dispatched an assassin dragon a decade ago to eliminate young dragons. By marrying Lucina and using her as a pawn, Hakan sees this as an opportunity to exact revenge for that long-past act of aggression. As Hakan speaks, the older woman, observing the exchange, reflects on his words with a sense of growing dread. She internalizes the harsh reality of the situation. Hakan, driven by a desire for vengeance, is manipulating Lucina to settle an old score with King Brion. The notion that Lucina is being used merely as a means to an end, a tool in Hakan's quest for retribution, disturbs her deeply. She realizes that this ruthless approach is not just about personal revenge, but is a reflection of Hakan's broader strategy and his unrelenting pursuit of justice, however brutal it may be. Hakan surveys the chaotic scene before him and frowns. He remarks that the current setting hardly reflects the grandeur and formality expected of a wedding. The surroundings, with their disarray and lack of festive decor, fall short of what he envisions for this significant occasion. Determined to rectify this, he instructs his guards to quickly fetch some flowers to enhance the ambiance and make it look more celebratory. The guards swiftly spring into action, moving purposefully to gather the most beautiful flowers they can find. Moments later, they return, carrying an assortment of vibrant, fresh blooms. Hakan takes the flowers with a nod of approval and turns to Lucina, explaining the importance of this gesture. He tells her that in her homeland, it is customary for brides to hold flowers during their wedding ceremony. This tradition symbolizes purity, beauty, and the new beginnings of married life. With a gentle smile, Hakan hands the bouquet to Lucina. As she accepts the flowers, she can feel their soft petals brushing against her fingers. She holds them tightly, feeling a mixture of nervousness and resolve. Holding the flowers close, Lucina takes a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions and prepare herself for the wedding that is about to unfold. Hakan then tells the priest to begin the ceremony. The priest starts reading their vows and eventually says that they may now kiss the bride. However, the priest suggests that they skip the kiss and go straight to the prayers. Hakan responds by saying he doesn't believe in God, so there's no need for prayers. The priest agrees, but insists that they need to complete the ceremony with a kiss, so it can be officially finished. Hakan turns to Lucina and tells her to close her eyes. He leans in and kisses her. As he does, Lucina smells a strong mix of blood and sweat, which overwhelms her senses. Feeling faint, she passes out. One of the guards observes that Hakan was supposed to kiss her passionately, but notes that it's odd that he made her faint. Hakan explains that his kiss was meant to be intense and crucial for the ceremony. After the kiss, Hakan turns to the older woman and says that he will spare the lives of Lucina's brother and mother because they share the same bloodline as his wife. However, he warns that if they ever touch the Mesoluk of Tyre again, he will completely erase their house from the map. With that, Hakan and his guards prepare to leave, making it clear that any further disrespect will have severe consequences. The older woman turns to her son and says they need to get Lucina back. Her son looks confused and reminds her that she sold Lucina for his future, so he doesn't understand why she can't just let it go. The older woman's expression hardens as she insists that she cannot allow Hakan to take Lucina away just like this, regardless of what she may have said earlier. Her son, looking worried, points out the grim reality that all their knights are now dead, leaving them with no protection or means to defend themselves. Realizing the gravity of their situation, the older woman's mind races as she considers their options. After a moment of intense thought, she decides that their only chance is to hire mercenaries. These hired fighters could offer them the protection they desperately need and help them regain control of the situation. Determined and resolute, the older woman vows to do whatever it takes to get Lucina back. She understands that the cost might be high, but she is ready to pay it. As they are traveling, Lucina slowly wakes up. One of the guards notices that she is awake and informs Hakan. Hearing this, Hakan decides that it's a good time for a break and a meal. He tells everyone to stop and rest. Hakan walks over to Lucina and checks on her. He asks how she is feeling, mentioning that he was surprised when she fainted earlier. Lucina tells him that she's feeling fine now. Hakan then tells her that she hasn't eaten all day and might be feeling hungry. Lucina responds that she isn't hungry, but Hakan laughs and says that his bride is just being shy. He also mentions that it will get cold at night, so they should make a fire to keep warm. One of the guards leads Hakan to the spot where they will set up the fire. Hakan thanks the guard for his help and sends him away. He then shows Lucina where to sit by the fire and makes sure she is covered up to stay warm. Lucina feels the pleasant warmth from the fire and thinks to herself how comforting it is compared to the cold she felt earlier. Hakan brings her some food and tells her to eat while it's still warm. Lucina looks at the food and notices that it has a delicious smell. She remembers how, back at the Baron's house, she only ate dry, moldy bread. The thought of this makes the food in front of her seem even more appetizing. Hakan asks Lucina if she suspects that the food might be poisoned. He tells her that he doesn't use poison and won't harm her. Lucina says she'll eat and takes a bite of the food. She quickly realizes that it tastes really good and starts eating hungrily. Hakan reminds her to eat slowly so she doesn't choke on the food. He also gives her some sheep milk and reassures her that there is no poison in it. Lucina thinks to herself how different this is from her life in the castle, where she would spend all day running errands just to get a few crumbs of bread. She can hardly believe she is eating such delicious food now. Next, Hakan asks Lucina how old she is. Lucina tells him she is 20 years old. Hakan reacts by saying that she is too young to be King Brian's bride, and calls King Brian a mad person. He explains that in the land of Tyre, King Brian sent assassins to kill innocent young dragons. Hakan then shares that he lost his brother, who was once a great king, in a battle. He says if he hadn't needed to quickly take the throne to keep the country safe, he would have sought revenge against King Brian by himself. He adds that if he hadn't been injured in the forest that day, he would have taken action against King Brian sooner. Hakan looks at Lucina and says that it's a shame she can't be King Brian's bride. He thinks to himself that he has killed many civilians, so from her perspective, he and King Brian might seem alike. Lucina then asks him where Teir is located. Hakan is surprised by her calm demeanor and that she isn't crying. He explains that people from Brion often view Teir as a land of barbarians filled with monsters. But he assures her that it's not like that at all. He tells her that if she travels to Teir, she will see for herself how different it is from what people think. Lucina thinks to herself that living with Hakan might turn out to be better than staying in Barek's castle. Hakan then tells her that once she arrives at the palace, she will have access to even better food, so she should try to be patient. Lucina replies that the food she's already had is delicious. Hakan reflects on how he thought she might be picky about the food because she is the daughter of a Brion noble. Instead, she seems quite comfortable with what she is given. He wonders if the reason she isn't speaking much is that she is feeling scared or anxious. Hakan tells Lucina that after she finishes eating, she can lie down in a comfortable place. He then mentions that he needs to take off his clothes. Lucina gets scared and says she will stay outside. Hakan asks why she has to act like that. He reminds her that he is her husband and she is his bride, so they will need to sleep together from now on. He also asks if in Brion the wedding night is called the consummation night. Hearing this, Lucina looks even more frightened. Hakan tries to explain that he's asking about the wedding night because he's not familiar with how things are done in Brion. He tells Lucina that in Teir, they usually have the consummation of the marriage first, and then if the woman becomes pregnant, that's when the marriage is officially recognized. Hearing this, Lucina starts crying. She thinks to herself that in Teir, they have the consummation first before officially holding the marriage ceremony. Hakan sees her crying and feels sorry. He tells her not to cry and says he didn't mean to make her upset. He tries to comfort her by saying that marrying him is probably better than being married to the old king. Lucina agrees but still says she is scared. Hakan understands that being taken away from her family and brought to a strange land must be very frightening. He tells her not to worry because he won't do anything to harm her. He says he will sleep outside so she can feel more comfortable. One of the guards comes up to Hakan and asks if he really left his bride alone inside the tent while he is outside. Hakan replies that he has decided to sleep outside. The guard points out that he set up a tent for them because, according to Brion customs, tonight is their wedding night. Hakan responds by saying that if a bride is taken away by barbarians and mistreated all day and night, she might lose her sense of being human. The guard then asks why Hakan, who had ordered all the Barrack people to be buried in Mezaluk, now seems to care about them. Hakan explains that since Lucina is now his wife, he needs to be careful with his words. He mentions that he used to not pay much attention to women, but Lucina reminds him of someone important to him. He says that, looking at Lucina, he feels a connection to that person and remembers the child who was close to the castle. He decided to spare the people of Barrack as a way of repaying the favor. The guard praises Hakan for finding a bride quickly because there is a need for a descendant. He notes that creating a descendant for the dragon clan is important work, so Hakan will need to make an effort to get close to women from now on. Lucina wakes up in the morning and feels upset because she remembers crying and falling asleep without removing her makeup. She thinks her face must look terrible. She hears the sound of water and wonders if she should take a shower. As she removes the makeup, she notices red spots on her face and wonders if she should treat them. Then, she remembers what Hakan said about not needing to worry about such things and decides not to treat the spots to avoid attracting attention. Suddenly, she hears someone approaching from behind and feels herself being picked up by a man who carries her away. The man carrying Lucina comments that it was easier than he thought to manage this situation. Another man mentions that they need to move out of the forest quickly so the dragons don't spot them and come searching. He suggests heading to a nearby place called Fuka Forest. Lucina thinks to herself that she can't go back to Baroness Barrick's castle. Just then, it starts raining suddenly. One of the men carrying Lucina looks up and is surprised when it suddenly starts raining. The other man explains that in this forest, if people don't offer peanuts, the dwarven elf Fuka will make it rain. He adds that searching for anything in the rain will be really hard, so it's actually a good thing for them. Lucina begins to shake with fear, and one of the men complains about how much she is shaking. The other man says that if she keeps shaking like this, they won't get paid because they'll be delayed and might not return in time. One of the men then notices Lucina's face and asks what's wrong with it. The other man responds that she seems to be infected with a disease from the barbarians. The first man wonders aloud if he should just leave her as she is. He doesn't want to waste a lot of money on her, only to end up getting sick and possibly dying himself. Suddenly, an arrow flies out of nowhere and hits one of their men, killing him instantly. It turns out that Hakan and his guards are the ones who have come to their rescue. The man holding Lucina threatens that if anyone comes closer, he'll kill them. Hakan tells Lucina to close her eyes. She does as he says, and then Hakan quickly kills the man holding her. After that, he asks Lucina if she's okay, because she's still shaking a lot. Lucina thinks to herself that she saw Hakan's bloody face, but she isn't scared. Instead, she feels safe and protected. Hakan carries Lucina down carefully and wraps her up to keep her warm. He notices that she has a fever and says that as soon as he realized she was missing, he followed her trail. He's sorry that he didn't get to her sooner and apologizes for how scared she must have been. He tells her that the rain will stop once they leave the forest and instructs his guards to prepare a campfire as soon as they're out. They should also get clean water for her to wash her face and clothes so she can change into something dry. Lucina thinks to herself that she's relieved she didn't have to go back to the Baroness Barrick's castle. She decides she wants to stay with Hakan. When Lucina gets back to the tent, she notices blood on her body. Because of the fever, the red spots on her face look worse. She wonders if she should treat them, but also remembers that if she does, Hakan might sleep with her. She tells herself that it might be okay to sleep with him. Just as she is about to start treating the spots, she hears a voice telling her not to treat them. Lucina turns around and sees a child standing there. She's surprised and asks him who he is. The child replies that he is Fuka, an elf of the forest. Lucina remembers being warned about the dwarven elf Fuka, who would make it rain if she didn't hand over peanuts. Fuka looks offended when she calls him a dwarf and says he's actually tall for a forest elf. He adds that she speaks better than he thought, especially since she was so quiet the day before. Lucina asks Fuka if he has been following her since yesterday. Fuka explains that he has never seen such power in Teir before, and wonders if she has healing abilities. When she asks how he knows that, he explains that as an elf he can sense things like that, almost like a mosquito can sense blood. He warns her not to use her healing powers too openly because if people find out, they will come after her in droves, like ants swarming a crumb of food. Lucina thanks him and says she will be careful from now on. Fuka then asks why she is always so quiet when she speaks so well. Lucina explains that she is scared of talking in front of others because she's afraid they might get angry and hurt her. That's why she usually keeps her words to herself. Fuka asks if she is okay with talking to things that aren't human. Lucina explains that talking to non-humans like the dragon she once healed feels safer for her. She remembers the time she healed a large red dragon with injured, bleeding wings. She used her hot healing powers on the dragon and wanted to talk to it, but she became overwhelmed and lost her composure. As Fuka listens, he thinks to himself that Lucina talks a lot. Hakan knocks and asks if he can come in. The elf Fuka says he's leaving now and will come back later. Hakan steps in and apologizes that the clothes for Lucina don't fit her well. He then asks her what's wrong with her face. Lucina explains that the spots are because of a fever. Hakan looks surprised and wonders if the fever caused the spots. He calls Tulin, the pharmacist, to come and check on her. Lucina thinks to herself that the spots aren't due to the fever. Tulan arrives and asks what's happening. Hakan explains that Lucina has spots on her face. Tulan tells Hakan that it looks like smallpox. He mentions that in Brion there was once a smallpox epidemic, and the symptoms were very similar to what Lucina has. Lucina quickly interrupts, saying it's not smallpox, but dye from the makeup she used. Tulan warns Hakan not to get too close or he might catch the disease, but Lucina insists that it isn't a disease. Tulan tells her to stay back, still concerned about the potential danger. Rumors start spreading that the king's bride has brought a disease to Tyar Kingdom. Hakan tells Tulan to put down his sword because it's not smallpox. He then turns to Lucina, urging her to finish explaining. Lucina says it's not a disease. She recently dyed her hair using sulfur and saffron juice. The spots on her face are from the dye, and the fever was from being in the rain. Tulan looks confused and asks her to explain more clearly. Lucina thinks about how the Baroness used to treat her and decides to stay quiet because she doubts anyone will believe her anyway. Tulan insists to Hakan that it must be smallpox and says they can't take her to the palace. He suggests they should burn everything she's touched to prevent any danger to Tyar. He complains that they shouldn't have saved her in the first place. Lucina wonders if she should use her healing abilities to improve the spots on her face. However, she remembers what the elf told her about not showing her healing powers too openly, so she hesitates. Lucina is feeling anxious and doesn't know what to do. King Hakan tries to comfort her and tells her to stay calm. He promises that he will listen carefully to everything she has to say until he understands her situation completely. Tulan, the pharmacist, warns that talking to someone with smallpox for too long could be dangerous. King Hakan disagrees, saying it's definitely not smallpox. He explains that smallpox usually starts with a fever, and then a rash appears later on. The rash doesn't come at the same time as the fever. And smallpox can make it very difficult for someone to eat because of mouth sores and vomiting. Hakan noticed that Lucina has been eating well, so he is sure it's not smallpox. King Hakan insists that the symptoms Lucina has are different from those of smallpox, and Tulan agrees with him. Hakan then turns to Lucina and asks her to explain what she was talking about earlier. He remembers she mentioned something about sulfur and dye. He tells her she should just say it clearly and that no one will scold her for speaking up. Lucina hesitates for a moment, but then explains that the spots on her skin are due to sulfur and yellow dye. She explains that she used sulfur to dye her hair blonde. She adds that the Baroness had told her that the old king was very fond of blonde hair, and that's why she had dyed her hair this way. King Hakan looks at Lucina closely and asks her if her rashes got worse after she was caught in the rain. Lucina tells him that yes, it seems like the rash has spread since then. Tulan, the pharmacist, explains that the sulfur in the dye can cause these kinds of skin reactions when it comes into contact with the skin, especially if it gets wet. He confirms that it's true this kind of reaction can happen from the dye. Hakan then makes a point. He says that if Lucina actually had smallpox, which is a serious disease, everyone who has kissed or touched her would have to be burned to prevent spreading the disease. He says that since they all agree it's not smallpox, they don't need to worry about such drastic measures. Everyone starts to feel more at ease, realizing that the situation isn't as dangerous as they first thought. Lucina thinks to herself that Hakan is the first person who really takes her seriously. In the past, whenever she tried to speak up, people would either get angry or laugh at her, and no one really listened. Hakan then tells Lucina to go inside and rest because she has a fever. He says she needs to be in a warm place, where she can relax. One of the guards comes up to Hakan and says that the people who were captured have finally confessed. Hakan asks if they've finally told the truth. The guard explains that they admitted they were following the Baroness's orders to find Lucina. Hakan says that since they used Lucina's name to try to save their own lives, it seems like they see Tyar as just a game. He decides he will go back immediately and burn down the entire castle to make an example of them. Lucina tries to stop him and says that killing everyone, including the innocent people, seems too extreme. Hakan says he's sorry, but even though it's her family, Insulting the Mesoluk of Tyar and touching the king's bride is too much. Lucina feels upset and thinks that this punishment might be too harsh. Hakan thinks about how people usually beg for their families' lives when they're in a tough spot. He asks Lucina if she wants him to kill her real father and brother. Lucina is troubled because the Baroness isn't her real mother. She wonders if she should admit that she's an illegitimate child, but she's not sure what to do. Lucina knows she comes from a famous background in the entertainment district, and she worries about how she will fit into Hakan's family. She realizes that she has nowhere else to go and decides she needs to pretend that she is the Baroness's real daughter. She lies down on the ground, feeling desperate, and begs Hakan not to kill her mother and brother. She tries to show that she is truly afraid and pleading for their lives. Hakan sees her lying on the ground and tells her not to do that because her body isn't well after everything that's happened. He shows some concern for her health. Lucina continues to plead with him to spare her family. She tells him how important her family is to her and how much she hopes he will show mercy. Hakan then asks her what she will do for him if he decides to spare her family. He explains that he cannot just forgive those who dared to harm his bride so easily. He wants to know what she can offer or do for him in return if he chooses to show mercy and forgive her family. He is serious about his decision and wants to make sure that if he does let them go, there is something in it for him. Lucina tells Hakan that she will do whatever he wants. As he looks into her eyes, he thinks about a child he once knew, and he feels conflicted. He asks her again if she really means she'll do anything for him. When she agrees, he tells her to kiss him. She is surprised by his request, but he reminds her that she promised to do whatever he asked. They share a kiss, and Hakan feels a mix of emotions. Hakan then decides that they should deal with the mercenaries in a harsh way. He tells his guards to have the dragon behead the mercenaries one by one and send the heads back to Berek as a warning. He wants the heads to be burned in front of everyone at the castle to show that if anyone dares to harm his bride again, they will face the same punishment. The guard agrees to this plan. Hakan also says they will leave after Lucina's fever goes away. He instructs the guard to make sure they have medicine to reduce the fever and prepare easy-to-eat food for her. King Hakan tells Lucina that he will have the guards stay outside so she can get some rest. She thanks him for being so considerate. Then he playfully asks if she could kiss him one more time, but he quickly says he's just joking. He adds that he won't bother her anymore so she can have some peace. Lucina thinks to herself that it's odd how happy he seems just from getting a kiss, especially since her face is covered in pimples and looks terrible. She finds it strange and wonders why he's so pleased with something that seems so awkward to her. They arrive at the Tyar Palace, and Lucina looks around, taking in the new sights. She's surprised by how different it is from what she had imagined. In Brion, people talk about Tyar as if it's just a dark, old cave where the people are backward and eat strange flying animals. But now, as she stands here, she realizes it's nothing like that at all. Tulan, one of the king's men, tells Lucina to step down from the carriage. As she does, she notices a strange smell in the air. It's a strong, burnt scent mixed with musk and a hint of sulfur. The smell makes her feel a little dizzy, like she's not used to it. King Hakan notices her discomfort and asks if she's feeling all right. He explains that the strong fire energy in Tyar can be overwhelming for people who are used to the earth energy of Brion. It takes time for them to adjust to the new smells and sensations. Lucina says she's okay and wonders why she feels so safe and protected when she's with Hakan, despite the strange smell and the new surroundings. As they reach the palace, Hakan asks Lucina what she thinks of it. She tells him that it's very different from what she had heard. Hakan explains that people from Brion don't really understand or recognize the people of Tyar, including their dragons. That's why they don't see how advanced and beautiful Tyar really is. Even though Tyar is known as the land of gold with a rich and stunning continent, people from Brion fail to see it. Lucina thinks to herself about what her life will be like living in this palace in the future, feeling both curious and hopeful. Hakan tells Lucina that he will show her around the palace. As they arrive, the whole kingdom seems to be celebrating the king's return. People cheer and greet him warmly. They notice Lucina standing beside Hakan and start whispering among themselves. They wonder who she is and where she's from, noticing her strange appearance and the rash on her face. Lucina wonders if people are treating her differently because of her rash. She sees that while the men around her, like courtiers and escorts, all look quite similar, the maids here are varied and diverse. A priest approaches to greet the king. Lucina thinks he looks different from the priests she's used to seeing in Brion. The priest says that King Hakan has brought with him the energy of the earth, and he presents Hakan with a container of purified water. Lucina feels a bit scared as she watches this, but Hakan explains that the water is meant to purify any bad energy brought by outsiders. King Hakan explains to Lucina that when people from Tyar leave the kingdom, they sometimes pick up bad energy. To clean off this bad energy when they return, they need to go through a purification process with holy water. This process is meant to be a welcoming gesture, not something to be afraid of. He tells her not to worry about it, as it is a normal part of their customs. Lucina notices that the rash on her face seems to improve a bit when the holy water touches it. The priest finishes the purification ritual and says she is now allowed to enter the main palace. Hakan thanks the priest for his efforts, saying that he did a great job. As they walk through the palace, Lucina is amazed by how beautiful and lavish it is. The palace is decorated with gold everywhere she looks. A woman rushes up to Hakan, excitedly welcoming him back. She praises him for showing the greatness of Tyar to the evil grave robbers from Brion and says she is very proud of him. Hakan thanks her for her kind words. The woman introduces herself as Karet. She says she didn't worry too much about Hakan's return because as the king, he is always capable of handling any situation. Then Karet notices Lucina and asks if she is a trophy. She looks at Lucina and remarks that she looks dirty and unkempt. Karet insists that she needs to take Lucina to the bathroom right away so she can be washed and cleaned up properly. Lucina starts to say something, but Hakan interrupts her and tells Karet that Lucina is his partner from Berek. Karet is surprised by this news. Hakan explains that he can't leave the position of mistress of the palace empty any longer, so Lucina will be having a baby and will eventually become his queen. Karet asks if Hakan is serious about this and wants to know what the obligations are. Lucina, confused, asks what Karet means by obligation. Hakan tells Lucina that she should go and change into some new clothes. He then asks Karet to make sure some maids are sent to help his bride. Karet tells a maid named Titi to guide Lucina to her room. Titi agrees and refers to Karet as the late queen, which surprises Lucina. She starts to wonder if Karet was Hakan's brother's wife who had passed away 10 years ago. She had thought that Karet and Hakan were lovers, so this new information confuses her. Titi introduces herself and explains that she will be taking care of Lucina. She tells Lucina that she should feel comfortable talking to her since she is Lucina's servant. Lucina nods and asks if this room is hers. Titi says yes, it is. She goes on to explain that because Lucina has not yet given birth to a child for the king, she cannot go into the queen's palace. She can only move there and be recognized as queen once she has a child for the king. Lucina realizes that this requirement is what Karet was referring to when she mentioned an obligation. Titi asks if she can help Lucina by taking off her clothes. As she does, she notices Lucina's hair color. Lucina explains that the hair dye has melted. She thinks to herself that the dye started to dissolve when the purification water touched it, and now the rash on her face seems to be getting better. She wonders if she can get more of the purification water. Titi asks if she means the holy water, and she says she'll get it right away. As Titi is about to leave, a bird flies in and chirps a cheerful greeting. Titi asks what the silver sparrow said, and the bird replies that it's Puka. Lucina asks if the bird has been following her. Puka confirms that he is and advises her to stick to using holy water rather than her healing powers. He explains that it's safer to use the holy water for now. Lucina thanks him and recalls that he mentioned liking peanuts. She asks if he has a favorite kind of peanut, and Puka says he likes all types of peanuts. Lucina tells Puka that she likes Tyar a lot. She thinks it will be much more enjoyable to live here than it was in Berek. She's pleased that she seems to be treated well and that no one here will hit her like they did back in Berek. Puka asks if she's not worried about having a child with Hakan. Lucina admits she feels a bit nervous because getting married and having a child is part of Tyar's law. But since she's already married to Hakan according to Brion's customs, it makes sense that they had their first night together. Before she can say more, Titi comes in with the purification water and shows Lucina where she needs to go. At the same time, a guard informs King Hakan that the dragons have returned from Berek. The king asks if the dragons followed his orders properly. The guard says yes and adds that the Baroness and her son are very scared. He questions whether Hakan will forgive the Bereks so easily, noting that 10 years ago, slayers were sent to kill Hichuling, and the king couldn't even get revenge on the person who killed the previous king. The guard expresses worry that if Hakan is too lenient, the Brions might start looking down on the Tyars. King Hakan tells the guard that he won't be left alone, but there is something he needs to know first. He asks if the guard remembers that 10 years ago, he was hit by a black arrow and fell while searching for the slayers who died in battle with Hakan's brother. The guard says he remembers that terrible day very well. The king explains that a girl saved his life in Berek's territory. Without her help, he wouldn't have made it back to Tyar. The guard recalls that the girl was just 10 years old back then, so she must be an adult now. The king agrees and says that even if he has to kill all the humans, he wants to make sure that girl stays alive. The guard agrees that someone with healing powers would be very useful and asks why the king didn't bring her to Tyar 10 years ago. He says her healing ability could have been a great help to Tyar. King Hakan then asks the guard if he thinks he should have kidnapped the girl who saved his life. He questions if that would be ungrateful, considering the scars on her face suggest she might have been the daughter of a commoner or serf. With her silver eyes and silver hair, he tells the guard to find out where she is before attacking Berek. The guard says he understands and will take care of it. King Hakan tells the guard to find out if Lucina is really the biological daughter of the Baroness. The guard is a bit surprised and asks if he means Miss Lucina. The king confirms that he does mean her and says he wants to know more about how the Baroness raised her. The guard wonders if the king thinks that the Baroness might have tricked them. The king just says that he wants to find out the truth. King Hakan then says that he's planning to take a shower and go to the hot springs. He adds that he doesn't want anyone to come with him while he's there. The guard, a bit confused, asks if he's really going to the hot springs. King Hakan just repeats the question and doesn't really respond. The guard quickly says it was nothing and doesn't ask any more questions. Lucina feels happy because the dye on her hair is finally gone and the rash on her face has disappeared. Her skin feels much softer now, and she thinks the purification water was really effective. As she's enjoying this relief, she suddenly hears footsteps coming toward her. She looks up and sees Hakan approaching. Lucina starts to worry about what she should do since she can't go outside right now and doesn't know how to handle the situation. Hakan looks at the girl and asks who she is. He had clearly said he didn't need any servants right now, so he is surprised to see someone there. Lucina feels anxious because she isn't dressed properly, and she's worried about what might happen. She starts thinking about how she might get in trouble and decides that maybe she should try to leave quickly. Hakan starts to wonder if Tulin sent this girl to tempt him or cause trouble. He looks at her and questions if Tulin was behind sending her there. Lucina, realizing that she might run into trouble, is nervous and thinks she should escape as quickly as possible. But before she can do anything, Hakan stops her. He says that he won't let her just run away and is upset that she tried to flee from him. He starts to threaten her, questioning how she could think she could escape from the king. Hakan takes a closer look at Lucina and notices how beautiful she is. Her eyes shine brightly, almost like the moon, and he feels like he has seen her before. When the dye in her hair is gone, it really makes her look like someone he remembers from before. Lucina notices that Hakan's expression is very serious, and she's afraid she might be punished. She starts begging him not to hurt her, saying that she will do whatever he asks if he just lets her be. Hakan tries to calm her down, assuring her that no one will harm her. He tells her that nobody would dare to touch his bride in his palace. Lucina, still feeling scared, asks if Hakan himself will hit her, and Hakan tells her firmly that he won't hurt her. Hakan asks Lucina why she is there. She tells him she just wanted to wash her face with the holy water. Hakan remembers that one of the maids asked him for holy water earlier, so it was for Lucina. He says there's nothing wrong with her and apologizes for looking so angry. He explains that he thought one of the maids had disobeyed his orders and came here. He apologizes for scaring her. Lucina says she's okay, and Hakan tells her that once she has his child, she will become the mistress of the palace. He wants her to always appear strong and dignified, even in front of him. He doesn't want her to show any weakness, especially as his queen. Lucina apologizes again, and Hakan reminds her that he already told her to stop saying sorry. Hakan thinks to himself that the girl from 10 years ago was brave and never showed fear, even when she saw a dragon. He wonders if Lucina's bravery is just a resemblance or if it's something real. The girl from before didn't seem to have a high status, and if she had healing abilities, she might have used them to treat the rash on her face. Lucina makes an excuse to leave, and Hakan asks where she's going since she hasn't had a proper shower yet. Lucina says she has already showered. She then asks where Hakan is taking her. He says he is taking her to his bedroom because a husband and wife should sleep together. Lucina screams at this, and Hakan asks if she is still afraid of him. Lucina is in her room with several maids. One of them looks at her and comments that it's wonderful how beautiful she looks now that the yellow dye is gone. She adds that Lucina will likely receive a lot of love and attention from the king. Another maid, however, seems a bit worried and says that Lucina looks quite sick. She questions if Lucina's body can handle everything she's going through. This maid also asks why the king hasn't been close to any women before. The third maid expresses concern, saying she fears Lucina might not be able to cope with the demands of the dragon race and might even die. The first maid tries to reassure everyone, saying that Lucina can handle it. She believes that Lucina will give birth to a beautiful child and eventually become a queen. Lucina listens to all this and wonders to herself if Hakan will hit her while she's sleeping, given all the talk about her new life. Later, Lucina goes to Hakan's room. He looks at her with a warm expression and tells her she is very beautiful. He is surprised and asks how she could have hidden such beautiful hair under such a harsh dye. Lucina thinks to herself that it's the first time someone has called her beautiful, and it feels new and strange to her. Hakan then asks if she will faint again if he kisses her. They share a kiss, and Lucina feels a mix of emotions as she thinks about how the body feels so different up close. Hakan points to a tattoo on his body and explains that it shows the pattern of the tribe he was born into. He assures her that there is no reason to be afraid of it. He invites her to touch the tattoo. As Lucina touches it, she thinks to herself about how stiff the male body feels, almost like touching a rock. Hakan tells Lucina that she is expected to stay with him and spend the night. Lucina thinks about what the maids had said earlier, that she might not be able to handle everything. She worries that if Hakan were to use his strength on her, it might be too much for her to endure. She starts to wonder if she would be able to survive such a situation. Hakan then climbs off her, and Lucina feels anxious, thinking he might be angry with her. Hakan reassures her that he is not angry, and then asks if she wants to return to her family in Berek. Lucina quickly replies that she does not want to go back. She is determined to stay, give birth to Hakan's child, and become the queen. Hakan then questions if she really understands what it means to be the queen of Tyar. He explains that being the queen involves preparing to give up her life for both him and Tyar. He asks if she is okay with that idea and if she is truly happy about it. After saying this, Hakan puts on his clothes and tells her that he won't touch her until she is completely ready for it. Then he leaves the room. Later, Lucina overhears the maids talking quietly among themselves. They are discussing that she didn't spend the night with the king, which is causing some gossip. They also mention that it seems like the king wants to marry Karet instead. The maids talk about how Tyar's royal family is known for being very strict, and they note that Karet is a stable choice, and her relationship with the king isn't bad. There are also rumors that King Hakan had a crush on his sister-in-law when he was younger, which made him quite famous. Lucina listens to all this and tries to understand what is going on and how it might affect her. Lucina hasn't seen King Hakan since that night, and she's starting to feel a bit sick. Titty suggests that maybe Lucina is feeling unwell because the king hasn't been around the palace for a while. She says that if the king comes back, he will find her, but the other maids keep talking about Carrot. Lucina worries that if the king loves someone as beautiful as Carrot, he might not even notice her at all. Titty then tells Lucina that the king has returned to the palace and says she should go and greet him. When Lucina goes to find the king, Carrot sees her and almost doesn't recognize her because of the change in hair color. Carrot asks if Lucina is the woman from Brion and if she's saying hello. Lucina tries to say hi, but Carrot can't understand her and calls her an idiot for talking like that. Carrot criticizes Lucina, saying she is too skinny and lacks grace. She implies that even if Lucina tries to be close to the king, she won't last long before she dies. Carrot asks Lucina what she would do if she decided to run away. She says that Lucina came all this way without having any real determination, almost like she's willing to become just another pet for a dragon. Lucina looks puzzled and asks Carrot what she means by that. Carrot explains that in Tyar's palace, people die, and it often isn't in a kind or gentle way. She tells Lucina that the palace is like a mausoleum for women, and it's very rare for someone to survive after receiving the dragon's energy. Carrot warns Lucina that if she really wants to save her life, she should give up on her unrealistic dreams and accept her situation. As Carrot is speaking, King Hakan walks in and asks if Carrot is here. She welcomes him warmly and says she was just talking to Lucina. Hakan notices they were having a conversation and asks what the advice was about. Carrot explains that if he allows it, she will give him some advice. She tells him that being a pet to a great dragon is not something everyone can manage. She points out that someone as weak and timid as Lucina is essentially throwing her life away by trying to live in this harsh environment. Carrot advises Hakan to carefully choose a life partner who is truly suitable for him and for the needs of Tyar. Hakan thanks Carrot for her advice, but says he will make his own decisions. He then calls for Lucina to come forward. King Hakan says he's been busy for the past few days, which is why they haven't had a chance to see each other. He asks Lucina if she's been having any problems, or if there's anything she needs to tell him. Lucina thinks to herself that she has a lot to say, but she isn't sure where to start. She finally asks if she will die when she becomes queen. Hakan wonders if this question is because of what he said to her last time. King Hakan explains that being close to a dragon is always risky. He knows she was brought here against her will and probably doesn't want to risk her life for him and Tyar. He understands that, from her point of view, there might not seem to be much difference between him and the king of Brion. Lucina insists that there is a difference and asks him to listen to her carefully without getting angry. Hakan is surprised and thinks it's strange that she's asking him to listen without getting angry, as he recalls that she is the only daughter of Baron Berek, who doesn't seem to listen to her. Lucina thinks to herself that she doesn't want to reveal that she's actually the Baroness's illegitimate daughter. Instead, she says it's because she often talks like an idiot. Hakan wonders if she was a child who was disliked and neglected. He remembers that she was supposed to be sent as a concubine to an old king, which might explain why she seems to have a troubled background. King Hakan tells Lucina that if he had a daughter as beautiful as her, he would treat her with the utmost care. He would decorate her in gold and listen to everything she says because she is so adorable. Just then, a guard rushes in with urgent news. He reports that something serious has happened. Adar is missing. When the king stopped by Kosik, it looks like Adar managed to escape through a gap in an open door. King Hakan says he needs to take care of this right away. He assures Lucina that Adar will come back once he hears the king's voice. He apologizes to her for having to leave so suddenly and promises to return as soon as he can. With that, he hurries off to handle the situation. Lucina is thinking about King Hakan calling her cute and what Karet said about dragon vitality. She decides to call Titi over to get some answers. She asks Titi what it means to receive dragon vitality. Titi explains that receiving dragon vitality means conceiving and giving birth to a healthy child who is part of the dragon race. Lucina then asks if she will die after giving birth. Titi says it's actually quite common for a mother to die during childbirth, especially when giving birth to a child with dragon blood. This makes Lucina realize that Karet probably believes she'll die after having the baby. Titi continues to explain that giving birth to a child of the Dragon King is no easy task. If Lucina manages to give birth to the king's child, she would have a chance to become a queen. She adds that the great queen Karet was once just a lowly maid from a poor family, but because she gave birth to the first king, she became a queen. Lucina thinks about this and wonders if having a baby will mean she won't have to worry about her background anymore. Titi reassures her that she too can become a queen if she gives birth to a beautiful child. Lucina thanks Titi for the encouragement. Titi then playfully asks if Lucina plans to wear something attractive next time to catch the king's eye. King Hakan says that Lucina might be surprised he was away in barrack for so long. He adds that she probably worried he'd go to war again. The guard chimes in, saying Lucina must be scared of losing her second son. He explains that Hakan's mother, Adar, was once a great queen. She was admired for having 2 sons, blessed by the guardian dragon and the fire god. But 10 years ago, she was devastated by the death of her brother. She lost her mind over it, refusing to acknowledge his death or allow his body to be buried. Her brother's body has been kept in Kosik, a sacred cave, for 10 years because she believes he will wake up one day. Hakan decides they should return to the main palace. The guard then asks Hakan if he doesn't want to go back to the palace. Hakan replies that he's not in the mood. The guard suggests that if Hakan doesn't like Lucina, he should at least think about Karet. The king asks what he means. The guard explains that 10 years ago, the crown prince was tragically killed in a violent massacre. Following that, even the first king, who had sought revenge for the prince's death, was also assassinated. This series of events has left the royal family in a precarious position, and the guard warns that if anything were to happen to King Hakan, it could mean the end of the guardian dragon's bloodline forever. The loss of the bloodline would be a severe blow to their realm and its defense. King Hakan, in response to the guard's concerns, tells him that he has found a partner. The guard acknowledges this news, but adds that there are troubling rumors about how the dragons treat their partners. He mentions that it's difficult to see the full extent of how these women are treated and the hardships their children might face. The guard refers to the history of the first king, who, despite his many relationships with various women, only finally succeeded in having a child with Karet. This historical context suggests that even with multiple partners, it was a long and challenging process to have a child who would continue the dragon's lineage. The guard implies that King Hakan might need to follow a similar path. He may need to form close relationships with several women, just as the first king did, to increase the chances of having a child with the guardian dragon. This is seen as a necessary step to ensure the continuation of the bloodline and to protect their realm. The guard's words highlight the complex and difficult nature of ensuring the survival of their heritage and the burdens that come with it. King Hakan listens but disagrees. He doesn't want to see so many women suffering. He points out that although Karet gave birth to his brother's child, many women who were with his brother died. Most daughters of the guardian dragon were never born because women from other races couldn't handle the dragon's firepower. Hakan explains that he can't force people into such a dangerous situation. Even though he knows there's a risk, he feels it's wrong to drag women into the bedroom and let them die. He believes that this is not something he should do, even if it means accepting that some risks come with it. The guard argues that it is the woman's choice. He explains that if they give birth to a child of the guardian dragon, they could become a queen. Many women from poor backgrounds who had little to lose came to Tayar's palace with high hopes. They were ready to face the dangers because they saw it as their chance for a better life. King Hakan disagrees and shares his concerns. He says that his brother Raikon once mentioned how many poor parents sold their daughters to the palace, hoping to improve their situation. This made the girls terrified and often crying before they went to bed because they knew the risks they faced. Hakan feels deeply troubled by this, knowing that many of these girls were scared and unhappy, which is why he doesn't want to force anyone into this situation. King Hakan says that Karet is the only woman he has ever hugged without fear. He explains that he fell in love with Karet more than anyone else because of this. The guard asks why Hakan loves Karet so much. He explains that since Karet has already given birth to a dragon, there is a high chance that she could do it again. The royal family of Tyar supports the idea of having Karet help with this because of her proven success. King Hakan remembers his older brother's feelings about Karet. His brother once said he knew Karet was meant to be his mate. He even wanted to be buried with her in Mezaluk, because she was the girl he truly loved. He told Hakan that one day he would find a queen who loved him for who he was, not just to seduce him. King Hakan says he doesn't feel the same way about Karet. The guard then suggests that if Hakan doesn't like Karet or his current bride, he should at least give Miss Lucina a chance and show her some affection. Hakan asks why the dragon race causes so many women to suffer in the process of reproduction. The guard explains that without the dragon race, the Tyar kingdom would have been conquered by its neighboring kingdoms a long time ago. All the beast races would have been enslaved, and the people of Brion would have treated Tyar's soldiers very poorly. The guard explains to Hakan that what's happening now is a bit like slaughtering the young, which is a terrible thing. They can easily kill off the Suan race, and the Brions have always looked down on them as if they were nothing more than savages. The reason the Brions don't just invade Tyar's land is because they are scared of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Clan has the powerful ability to control fire, which is a huge advantage. Without the power of the Guardian Dragon, it would be almost impossible to keep the people of Tyar safe and protect their land. The guard goes on to say that when the first king was still alive, it was understandable that he might complain or be upset about things, but things have changed now. Hakan can't just sit around and grumble about the situation. He needs to step up to his responsibilities. The guard urges Hakan to go and be with Miss Lucina, to hug her, and to have a child with her. This child is important because it will be the next guardian dragon, which is essential for protecting Tyar. It's a big duty that Hakan needs to fulfill to ensure the safety and strength of his kingdom. King Hakan wonders aloud what he should do if Lucina ends up losing her life. The guard responds, saying it might not matter in the end. He admits that at one point he wanted to kill Lucina, but his anger led him to let her become his life partner instead. Now he's puzzled as to why he cares so much about her. King Hakan agrees that he's also confused, speculating that it might be because she resembles the girl who once saved him. The guard explains that if King Hakan hadn't stepped in to protect Lucina, she would have faced severe mistreatment from the old king of Brion. It's well known that many of King Brion's concubines did not survive, as they were often treated harshly. Lucina's situation could have been much worse if she had ended up in Brion's palace. Given the harsh reality she faced, if her fate is to end tragically, it might actually be better for her to have a child and become a queen first. The guard thinks that this idea could be beneficial for Lucina, as it would allow her to leave a legacy and secure a significant position before her potential demise. King Hakan, hearing this perspective, asks if Lucina herself agrees with this view. The guard suggests that the king should speak directly to Lucina to find out how she feels. Even if Lucina's destiny might involve an early death, the guard believes that having a child and becoming a queen could still be a worthwhile outcome. He emphasizes that they should let Lucina's fate unfold naturally and not try to overly control or dictate her future. At this moment, Tidi enters the room and informs Lucina that King Hakan has returned. King Hakan walks in and notices that Lucina is still awake. He looks at her with a concerned expression and asks, "Why aren't you sleeping yet?" Lucina greets Hakan with a warm smile when he walks into the room. He tells Tidi to leave, saying they need some time alone. Once Titi leaves, Hakan turns back to Lucina and says that the more he looks at her, the more beautiful she seems. He asks if she feels sad because he hasn't been around the palace much lately. Hakan assures her that he plans to spend more time at the palace from now on. As he says this, he leans in and they share a gentle kiss. Lucina feels a little shy but also bold, so she asks for more affection. Hakan looks at her with a smile and asks if she's not afraid. He then lifts her carefully and carries her over to the bed. Once they are there, Hakan looks at her seriously and asks if she's really ready to risk her life for Tayar now. He wants to make sure she understands what she's getting into. Feeling a bit flustered, Lucina asks Hakan if she is cute. Hakan replies with a smile that of course she is. Lucina is surprised and a bit taken aback because it's the first time anyone has called her that. Hakan explains that compared to the people from Brion, she's so cute that it almost seems strange. Lucina suddenly remembers what the maids had said and starts to feel uneasy. She pushes Hakan away, and he looks at her with concern, asking what's wrong. Lucina hesitates and then says that Miss Carette is also very beautiful. She asks Hakan if he has feelings for Carette. Hakan looks confused and asks what she's talking about. Lucina explains that there are rumors going around saying he wants to marry Carette. Hakan reassures her, saying she shouldn't pay attention to those rumors. He adds that people have even said he had a crush on Carette when he was younger, but he assures Lucina that she has nothing to worry about. Hakan tells Lucina to stop talking about Miss Carette. He gets firm and says if she mentions her again, he will leave. Lucina is confused and thinks to herself that Hakan didn't actually say he doesn't like Carette. She starts to wonder if he really has feelings for Miss Carette. She compares herself to Carette and feels insecure because Carette is so beautiful. Lucina asks Hakan if the compliments he gave her were just lies. Hakan looks confused and doesn't understand what she means. She tells him that Miss Carette seems more beautiful than she is. Hakan gets a bit frustrated and tells Lucina to stop talking about Carette. He asks if she really wants him to leave. He says that if she doesn't want to be his bride, she should just say it clearly and not upset him with all this talk. The next morning, the maids are gossiping about what happened. They tell Carette that Hakan left Lucina, and since then, he hasn't come back to the palace. One of the maids says it looks like Lucina was scared and rejected by the king. Another maid adds that Lucina probably didn't want to join the fierce tribes they call monsters. Carette comments that Hakan doesn't like boring girls and will soon lose interest in Lucina. She was surprised when she heard that the king personally chose Lucina and brought her here, but now she feels there's no need to worry too much. One maid says that Hakan will likely get disappointed in Lucina and choose Carette as the queen of Tayar instead. She believes that after Carette gives birth to a child for the king, she will become the queen. The maid explains that the king is a fan of Carette, and he only hesitated a little because he felt sorry for the first king. Carette is confident that Hakan will definitely choose her in the end. Carette sits and thinks about how Hakan used to look at her. She remembers how he seemed to admire her a lot. When his brother died, Hakan had looked at her with hope, thinking she would be good for him. But then, after his brother's death, Hakan turned his back on her because he couldn't handle the guilt he felt. Carette is confident that Hakan will come back to her eventually. She is determined that the queen's palace will be hers and she won't let anyone else take it from her. Lucina talks with Titi and tells her that since that day, King Hakan hasn't come to see her at all. She's worried and feels like maybe Hakan is too busy to think about her right now. Titi tries her best to calm Lucina down, saying that King Hakan is probably just very busy with important duties and tasks. She tells Lucina that the king will definitely come back to find her once things settle down. Even though Titi's words are meant to comfort Lucina, she can't shake off her feelings of foolishness. Lucina keeps replaying in her mind how she wasn't able to express her true feelings to Hakan. She worries that her inability to communicate clearly might have made him angry or upset. Every time she thinks about it, she feels more anxious. She starts to realize that she can't keep acting so unsure of herself. She understands now that if she wants things to change and improve, she needs to stop being so hesitant and unclear about her feelings. She knows she must be more confident and straightforward about what she wants. Feeling a strong sense of determination, Lucina decides she needs to take action. She knows that simply waiting around won't solve anything. So she turns to Titi for help. She asks for advice on what she should do next. She wants to understand how to approach King Haakon properly and how to communicate her feelings clearly. Lucina is determined to make things right and ensure that she doesn't miss another opportunity to express herself. She is ready to take the necessary steps to improve her situation and her relationship with the king. Titi asks Lucina if she wants to learn how to speak more clearly. Lucina nods and says she just wants to follow her advice. Titi then asks if she means she wants to learn how to speak in a clear sequence. She explains that if Lucina practices speaking regularly with her, her ability to speak clearly will improve quickly. Titi shares that when she first arrived in Tyar, she also had to practice speaking every day by herself to get better at it. Lucina is curious and asks if Titi is originally from Tyar. Titi explains that she is actually from a place called Ruwandila. She tells Lucina that she came to work in Tyar's palace because she wanted to earn money to help pay for her siblings' school fees. She hopes to support them through her work here. Titi then encourages Lucina to try saying a simple sentence and to speak slowly. Lucina thinks for a moment and then asks how old Titi's siblings are. Titi replies that her siblings are 13 and 15 years old, and she adds that her younger sister is especially cute. She then asks Lucina if she has any brothers or sisters and if they are close. Lucina hesitates and says that her brother isn't really her brother, but it's a complicated situation. Titi asks her to start from the beginning and say it slowly. Lucina then says she has a brother, but they are not very close. Titi looks interested and is about to ask more, but just then, a maid comes in and tells Titi that the great Queen Carrot is calling for her. Titi and Lucina head over to the Queen's palace together. As they walk, Titi reminds Lucina about what she taught her. She should speak in full sentences and take turns talking. Lucina feels a bit nervous and wonders why Carrot has called her. Titi explains that there is a big royal party coming up, and it looks like Lucina doesn't have an outfit for it yet. Carrot wants to give her a suit to wear for the event. When they arrive at the palace, Titi takes a look at the suit Carrot has chosen and comments that it looks more like something for a funeral rather than a party. Carrot seems displeased and asks Titi if she is refusing the king's gift and only thinking about her own people back in her homeland. She turns to Lucina and asks if she doesn't like the suit. Carrot insists that Lucina should wear the suit and leave the palace right away. Carrot then continues, questioning whether Lucina doesn't understand what the king's intentions are or if she thinks that the gift is just out of pity for her current situation. Titi adds that if Lucina wears mourning clothes while everyone else is dressed in bright, colorful costumes, she will stand out in a way that could be misunderstood. Titi warns that it could make it seem like Lucina is upset with everyone or still holding a grudge about her homeland. Lucina starts to worry, thinking to herself that if everyone really misunderstands, King Haakon might not want her around anymore. She wonders if perhaps everyone actually wants her to go back to her hometown rather than stay here. As she is lost in these troubled thoughts, a loud shout from a lady suddenly brings her back to reality. The lady is standing there and saying that she is really hungry. Lucina looks at her and asks, "Who is this?" Titi responds that she doesn't know the lady very well because she has only recently started working here. The lady then notices what Lucina is wearing and asks if those are mourning clothes because she heard someone she knows might have died, and she feels sorry for her. Lucina tries to explain that the outfit is actually meant for a party, not for mourning. The lady insists that Lucina should wear something more colorful if she's going to the party. Titi thinks to herself that the lady's jewelry looks quite elegant and expensive, which makes her think that this lady might have a higher rank than a usual maid. This seems a bit odd to Titi. The lady, who introduces herself as Agar, says she can help fix Lucina's suit so it will be more suitable for the party. Titi looks at Agar and asks her who she is and what her role is. Agar explains that she is someone who can help improve the dress, but she needs some food first. She says she is very hungry and asks for some rice. Lucina decides to help and tells Titty to give Agar some rice so she can start working on the suit. Karet then asks the maids if Agar has disappeared again. One of the maids explains that Agar had insisted on being alone in the cave. While she was by herself, she went to the palace and stopped by the room where the Bryon girl is staying. Karet says there's no need to tell King Haakon about this situation, as it might cause him unnecessary worry. Agar then mentions that she has already eaten well and is now ready to fix the dress. Titty and Lucina try to calm her down, telling her to relax and take her time. Agar reassures them that she will make sure the dress is fixed properly and ready in time for the party. King Haakon asks where Lucina is. The guard offers to go and find her, but just then, Karet walks in and makes a comment. She suggests that Lucina might be nervous or scared because she thinks the king might ask her to sleep with him again. Karet wonders if that's why Lucina is late to the big banquet. King Haakon, feeling a bit frustrated, tells the guard to let Lucina know that if she doesn't want to come to the banquet, she can just stay in her room and get some rest. He doesn't want to force her to attend if she's uncomfortable. Karet notices that Haakon seems to be in a bad mood and decides to offer a solution. She says she will perform a dance for him, hoping it will cheer him up. The guard agrees with Karet and says that her dance routines always look amazing. While this is happening, Lucina is outside and wonders why she is not allowed to enter the party room. She asks the guard why she can't get in. The guard explains that only people who are wearing outfits given to them by the Great Queen Karet are allowed inside. Lucina tries to explain that her outfit was indeed given to her by Karet, and it was just recently adjusted to fit her properly. She insists that she should be allowed in since her outfit is from the queen herself. The guard looks at Lucina and thinks she looks very attractive. He remembers that Karet had promised she would come out looking torn and that she would make fun of Lucina. Even though Lucina looks great, the guard feels he can't let her in. Karet wants all the attention from King Haakon, and he pushes Lucina away, thinking that it's not a big deal since Lucina has always been treated coldly. Lucina feels frustrated and confused. She wants to know what she can do to get into the room because she is worried that King Haakon might misunderstand her if she can't get inside. She turns to Titty and asks if there's anything they can do to solve this problem. Titty is also concerned and tries to figure out how to help Lucina. Lucina also asks Puka for assistance, hoping that someone can find a way for her to enter the party. While all this is happening, King Haakon is lost in thought about his brother, Lycan. He remembers how Lycan used to admire Karet. Lycan was not just any warrior. He was a legendary figure who managed to unite all the tribes of Tyar and transform it into a powerful kingdom. Lycan earned the title of the Great King because of his remarkable achievements and was deeply loved and respected by everyone in the kingdom. Haakon reflects on his brother's legacy and the high standards that come with being part of the royal family. Haakon has always looked up to his older brother, Lycan, with great admiration. He thinks about everything Lycan had, his wife, his powerful weapon, and his grand throne. Haakon can hardly imagine what it would be like to take over Lycan's place, or to inherit all of Lycan's possessions. The thought of how his ambition might lead him to take over everything Lycan had makes him pause and consider the weight of such a responsibility. Lycan had even sacrificed himself by taking an arrow for Haakon. Now, Haakon is the last guardian dragon, and he knows it's his duty to lead Tyar with the same greatness that Lycan did. In a flashback, Haakon remembers having to make a tough decision. He thinks that he needs to sleep with Karet to have a child who can continue the line of the guardian dragons. But as he thinks about his brother's memory and the love his brother had for Karet, he starts to feel uncomfortable. Karet had been deeply in love with Lycan. Haakon feels it's unfair and wrong to force her into a relationship with him. He decides he will find another woman to be his queen, someone who will willingly accept that role. But Karet, in the flashback, tells him something surprising. She explains that while she once loved Lycan as a king, the only person she loves now as a man is Haakon. She insists that it's okay for them to be together. She says that if Haakon wants her to be his queen, she is ready to be with him and help him lead Tyar. This surprising declaration makes Hakan reconsider. Karat's words make him think deeply about their future and the responsibilities he must shoulder as the new guardian dragon. The guard sees that King Hakan is looking troubled and asks if he's all right. Hakan thinks to himself that this feeling is starting up again. Every time he remembers that particular day, a strong headache comes on. As he tries to clear his mind, he notices a black butterfly fluttering nearby. He thinks it looks like the butterfly has come from the moon. It feels almost as if the moon itself is casting its light down on him, and suddenly his headache starts to ease up. The strange sight of the butterfly seems to have a calming effect, making him feel a little better. Enjoying this recap so far? Comment Lucina below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao!